Hey guys, it's Kyle from AK Pro Films, and today let's create a space-style intro inside of Motion 5. Alright, so before we actually create this intro, let me show you what we'll be creating today. So now that you know what we're going to create inside of Motion 5 today, I have a couple more things to tell you about. Down below in the description, you're going to find links to all of this goodness. You're going to find this concrete texture that we're going to use to make this star setting. You're going to find this lens flare. You're going to find the project file. And you're also going to find this music that Jay Kwalk on SoundCloud made for me. He creates a lot of music for my channel that I use in many of my videos, so make sure to check out this music, download it, and check out his SoundCloud as well. Now before we actually dive into Motion, we're going to cover 4 steps today. The first step is creating the setting with all the stars and all that cool stuff. The second one will be adding all the lights to our scene. The third step will be adding the 3D text, and the fourth step will be animating all of the this whole intro. So what we want to do is open up Motion 5 itself, and when it opens, we want to go for a blank Motion project with a broadcast HD 1080 preset, a frame rate of 30 seconds to make it nice and clean, and a duration of 10 seconds. Now press on open. So the first step I do in most of my motion tutorials is go over here to the 100% and press fit. Basically what this does is fits the canvas to our working area so we can see everything that's happening. So let's delete this blank group and let's drag and drop this concrete texture into this project area right here. Now a thing that I mention in all of my tutorials is make sure to stay organized, because that way you'll be able to delete something, change a keyframe setting, add something, and you just know where everything is. So right here, instead of calling it group, let's call this textures. Alright, and then let's rename this concrete texture to back. And the reason why I called it back is we're going to have 3 different textures, or we're going to duplicate this texture 3 times. So we're going to have one in the back, one in the middle, and one right in front of the camera. That way a nice parallax effect will happen. So what we want to do is right click on this and press group, and then let's press Command D 2 times, and that way we'll have a back, mid, and front group. So let's just rename all of this stuff. So back, and right here let's call this mid, call this mid, and this front, and this guy front. Good deal. So now we have all of our textures, and now what we want to do is go over here to the add object and add a camera, because this is going to be a 3D intro. Pretty cool, right? So with this camera right away, we're presented with our active camera in the controls. All these controls are used for every different type of camera option, such as the perspective view as well. So click on the perspective view and let's dolly out by using the dolly tool right here, and then orbit the camera around. And right here you see this little yellow outline that indicates what the active camera is seeing. So with these textures, we want this front to be in the front, mid to be in the middle, and the back to be the back. So what we want to do is with our back, let's go to our properties, and in our position on the Z axis, we want to bring that to -2000. And then with our mid, we want to go to -1500, and our front to -1000. So there we go, we have everything aligned, our front, mid, and back. One other side note is wherever you're watching this video, drop a comment, because I want to see where everybody's watching this video. It's pretty cool to see that, so if you're able to do that, that'd be much appreciated. So now back in our active camera view, you can't really see anything. The point is that these are all overlapping each other. So on the back, what we want to do is scale that guy up so it's filling up our whole canvas and a little bit more. Then with our mid, we want to scale this guy up so it fits the whole canvas, just like that. Looks pretty good. Then our front, we want to scale this one up as well. Alright, so if you go back into our perspective view, you can see that these are all scaled up appropriately, and if you click on the camera, it's filling up that whole active camera view. So let's switch back over to the active camera view. So if we do anything to these right now, they're all going to be overlapping each other and looking kind of boring. So what we want to do is with our back, let's keep that where it is. But then on our mid, let's rotate this guy by going to the inspector rotation, and on Z, let's rotate that just a little bit, just like that. And you can see everything that's happening in that perspective window over there to the right hand side of the viewer. So let's rotate it 20 degrees, and let's also scale it up a little bit so the edges are completely filled up by that camera. So then on our front, what we want to do is go over here to the rotation Z as well, rotate it the other way, so maybe -8 or something cool like that, and then also scale up this guy as well. Basically, this is going to have the texture looking different on each layer, which is what we would like. Good deal. So now what we want to do is, in order to see through all of the front and the mid texture, we want to change the blending mode. So go over here to the front, and then what you want to do is go over to blend mode and change that to multiply. And then also on our mid, let's go over here, change the blend mode to multiply. But on the back, let's keep that at normal, because we want the background just to be the background. Looks good to me. So if we dolly in just a little bit and we orbit the camera around, you can see we get like this starry parallax, which is really cool. So just so you know what our camera settings are right now, for the X we're at 0, Y we're at 0, and Z we're at -868. So keep that how it is right now. So that looks pretty good. So that completes our first step, which is setting up the whole space intro. Now let's move on to the second step. Alright, so let's begin the second step, which consists of adding the lights to our scene. So to add a light, let's go over here to Add Object and click on Light. So this is going to be our light that's going to sit right in front of the back layer. So let's press Return on the Light, Command A, and let's rename this Backlight. Good deal. And then let's switch back over to our perspective view so we can align that light to be right in front of our background layer. Alright, so from right here you can see our back plate, our mid, and our front. So we want to put the light right in there. So with our backlight, let's go over here to the properties, and on the Z, let's move that in the negative direction right to our back layer. Right about there. We don't want to show up on the mid, we just want it to show up on the back. That looks pretty nice. And inside our light setting, or our light controls inside the perspective or inspector view, we want to increase the intensity quite a bit. And we also want to change the color. I'm going to go for like this purple color right here. Something that I encourage all of you guys to do is, with any intro that I show you how to create on my channel, just go crazy with it, make it unique and make it your own, because that's how you learn. I'm just kind of giving you the guide of how to create it, because not all of my projects are going to fit all of your projects. So just feel free to mess around with the values, make it your own, because that's always the best part. Alright, so we can see we just added that backlight. Let's go back to the active camera view. And from here, you're probably wondering to yourself, everything looks black, I can't really see anything. Well, the point of this is that our front, what we need to do is click on the image, go to Properties. We want to drop down the opacity just a little bit, maybe to like 80 or 75-ish. And then on our mid, we want to drop that opacity down to about 70-ish as well. So now you can see it a little bit better, but to see it even better, you want to increase the intensity of the light quite a bit. So there we go, you can see that purple light. And then if we move around our canvas here, you can start to see a little bit of the parallax. And you'll start to see that in just a little bit. So with our mid, let's increase that opacity just a little bit more. And then on our front, we want to do the same thing. And then what we also want to do is add a couple more lights, one to the front and one to the mid, to brighten up the whole scene. So add object, add another light, drop that behind the backlight here, and let's rename that to front light. Alright, good deal. And so what we want to do for this guy is we want to increase the intensity, because this will affect only the front layer. So let's go back over to our perspective view and move that light according to the, or just bring that right in front of the front layer. Perfect. And move that off a little bit to the left-hand side. Hop back over to the active camera view. And from here, now you can see that parallax effect, and it looks really cool. But the thing is, this light is a really strong white color. So what you want to do is go over here, make that maybe like a pink or a purple color, make it your own. And then it starts to have a nice color to it. And then duplicate that light again, bring that right in the middle here, and let's call this mid-light. Oops. And to rename things, I'm pressing a return and then Command A. So mid-light. All right, good deal. Now it looks super bright, but hop back over to your perspective view. And what you want to do is go to Properties. And now we can utilize the X, Y, and Z tools to align this guy. So bring that more in the negative space and pop that right in front of that mid texture. So as you can see, that the perspective view is really handy for aligning things in 3D space, and that's why I really love that tool. You can also use these on-screen controls, but they can be a little hard to see throughout many different layers. So on the mid-light, feel free to customize this guy out a little bit as well. Increase or decrease the intensity of the light to what you like. I might go for a little darker blue, purple, maybe, just to add some variation to the space scene here. So now if you rotate or orbit around your scene, you can see you get quite a bit of parallax. And if you want to amplify that parallax, feel free to dolly in, and you can see you get quite a bit of parallax. And I think that looks really cool. Now, I kind of changed my mind. I don't like the blue on that mid-light, so I'm just going to change it more to like this purpley color, make it a little bit darker. There we go. That looks pretty sweet. So now we have our back, mid, front lights, our camera, and all of our textures. So now we added our lights, and now it's time to add the 3D text. So what you want to do to that is go over here to this text tool. So let's jump in to the third step, which is adding that 3D text. Alrighty, so what you want to do is hop on over here to the text tool and click and hold on that guy and go to 3D text. And now just click anywhere in your canvas. We're going to line this up here in just a second. And with that text, we didn't actually add that, so click and hold on the 3D text. Click and hold, boom, there we go. And then just write something in there. So I'm just going to call this space because I don't know what else I'd do. I mean, I could do interstellar, I don't know. So just customize the text, make it your own. I'm just going to call it space because it's kind of an interesting title, I guess. No. So what you want to do is move that text right below the camera here. It pops it up in its own group. That's not what we want. Delete that extra group, and now it's in its own. So let's press Return Command A and call this text. And it is called space because that is what we named it. Now let's not go into the front. Let's go into the perspective view here, and you can see our text is kind of like aligned in the by the middle texture. Now use the on-screen guides or the tools in the inspector over here to align it. Feel free to dolly in on this guy. And what I want to do is I still want to have quite a bit of parallax. So let's bring that quite a bit in front of the front texture. So inside of our active camera, everything looks aligned correctly, which is what we would like. Then go over here to text, go to format, and let's increase the size of the text. Right, there we go. That looks pretty good. So what we want to do with this text is we want to make it 3D and look really cool. All right, so I'm going to use a font called Avenir next. And I like this font just because it can, it's a really skinny font and it looks really cool for like futuristic titles. Feel free to change it according to whatever you want to do today to make this look cool. All right, so I'm going to go Avenir next, ultralight, and I like the size right now. I'm going to decrease it, but I'm going to increase the tracking. All right, so I'm going to bring that to 45.45. That looks pretty good to me. Then click and drag on this text until the online or on-screen grids snap into place. All right, that looks pretty good. And now if you just want to move around your scene, you can see you get quite a bit of parallax and it looks like you're in a spacey environment, which is really cool. So now what we can actually do is minimize the texture group right here and lock that. just because if we move around or do something like that, it's not going to mess up our scene already. So that looks pretty good. But now let's customize the text just a little bit more. So hop into the perspective view, orbit around just a tad bit here, and dolly in quite a bit. Basically what I'm doing is I'm using the perspective tool to look at things and not messing up what the actual camera sees. So click on the space and go to appearance here, and feel free to customize the depth of the text. I might make it just a little bit, maybe like 30 or something like that. That looks pretty good. Now depth direction, I'm going to keep centered. Weight, I'm going to increase the weight just a little bit, so it's not as skinny. It's just a little bit, has a little bit more weight on it, I guess. And then front edge, I'm going to go down here to this bevel tool, this bevel setting. Just, you see this little bevel here. So now you can customize the front edge size here. I'm going to go for something like 1.61, just so we have a flat edge, but then a bevel as well, which is really nice. I'm going to keep the back edge the same as the front, and inside corners I'm going to keep this straight and not round or I don't know what that is, mitre or something like that, I guess. Straight. I'm going to keep it to straight there. Now with our lighting style, let's change that from standard to backlit, just because it brings some more light. It kind of looks more spacey, I guess. Now with our lighting style, yep, that's backlit. Intensity is fine. Let's turn on some self-shadowing. Just make it look a little bit more realistic. In our environment, I'm going to change that to squares because I think that looks really cool. Feel free to play with that. You can't really see anything right now, but you will in just a second. So with our active camera, I just switched over here. Let's dolly in just a little bit so we can see what we're doing here. And with our text, it looks pretty sweet right now, but the material is kind of boring. So you can either go for single or multiple materials. I'm going to keep it at single, and I'm going to make all those materials this chrome finish. And I think that looks super cool. It kind of looks pretty lame right now, but I mean, what we want to do is, since we chose this squares environment map, that's going to allow for some really, really cool reflections. So to see those, just rotate along the Y degrees here, and then the X degrees as well. And you can see you're getting this really cool, these really cool reflections on the text, which is really cool. So let's see here. Let's keep rotating this around until we get to a point where we like it. That's really cool. Now let's rotate that on the Y. There we go. That looks super nice. You see these little reflections on the bevel that we set, and also on the face. And if you want to choose more options like the contrast and all that good stuff, feel free to do that on this environment because you do have a lot of controls that you can use. So I think that basically does it for the text. I think the weight's just a little bit too big on this guy. Maybe drop it down to like 1. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Alrighty, so that looks pretty good right now, but there's one other thing to make this text look a lot better before we animate this title, and that is this lens flare that you can download from the description. So drag and drop this lens flare into this text group, and right off the bat it looks pretty lame, just because you can't see anything. What you want to do is hop on over to Properties, Lighting, and you want to turn off lighting on this group. And you can see this is a ginormous lens flare that looks super cool. If you want to learn more about these lens flares, let me know in the comment section below. So after you go to Properties and you change that lighting style, you want to go to the blending mode and change that to screen so it appears over the text, which is really cool. Now let's go inside of our perspective view, dolly out quite a bit here, rotate around, and you can see that flare is not sitting on the same plane as that text. So using the on-screen guides just to line that roughly to where the text is here, you can also drop it down on the Y just a little bit, and you can monitor all that activity in that active camera window right below this ginormous view, like right here. Alright, so let's hop back over to the active camera, and you can see that that lens flare looks pretty cool. You don't need to touch the Y-axis just because this is a moving lens flare, and it kind of fits that title very nicely. All right, one thing that I noticed is the background looks really bright. So there's a couple options here. You can either go to the textures and hop inside of here and adjust the opacity here, and that's a good option to do as well because it gives you a little darker of a color and increases the parallax look. I'm going to undo that. I'm also going to drop down the opacity just a hair. And I'm going to customize these lights. So the front light looks a little bit too bright, so let's drop that down. Or the front light, yeah, the front light does. But the back light looks very, very bright. So what I want to do there is drop it to around like 300. And one thing I noticed is it's filling up the whole background. So instead of a point light, let's go to a spotlight. And with the spotlight, you get a couple more options like the cone angle. I'm going to do a cone angle about 58 degrees and soften that edge quite a bit there. So it's kind of like a vignette effect, which is super nice. And then feel free to customize the brightness of this background here. And the midlight, I'm going to drop that down as well, just so we get more of like a deep purple color. So there we go. That looks quite a bit better, which I'm very happy about. So now let's lock up the textures again because we're done with those for right now. The text we're not quite done. There's one more thing we want to do. One thing that I noticed is really cool is if we bring the lens flare and pop it up to the front or the top right hand corner, it makes this intro look like 20 billion times better. So let's duplicate this lens flare here and move that up to the top here, the top right hand corner. And inside of properties, let's scale up this lens flare quite a bit. It just adds to the overall intro and makes it look more space-like. You can also drop down the opacity if you think that's a little too much. Or you can scale it down a little bit if you think that's too much as well. Alrighty, I think that looks really nice. Let's hop on over to our perspective view one more time. It's on the same plane as the text, which is great. So active camera again. And one thing that I noticed too is that top right-hand lens flare is moving as well. So what we want to do is we want to make a still image of this, and then it'll stay in the same place the whole time. So press Command A, or return Command A, and let's rename this to lens flare still. There we go. So what we want to do now to get a still image is Option, click on this check mark to solo that, go to Share and Export Selection, or Save Current Frame. And let's export this as a PNG image. Render settings are all okay. Press Next and save it to our desktop and call this still flare. Press Enter and it should save it right on your desktop here. Alrighty, so let's give motion a couple seconds and you can see that right there. So now to unsolo this, let's press Option, click on this guy, and then let's delete this flare. So click on lens flare still, press delete, but then drag and drop still flare right above this lens flare. Alrighty, so now let's move this still flare to cover this whole project because we want it to cover the whole project. So now let's go over to properties, go to our lighting mode right here and press off. And with this still flare, let's go over to our perspective view and we can see that right there. We want to bring that right in front or right on the same plane as that lens flare on the text. So hop on over to active camera again. And with that still flare, let's drop that down on the Y just a little bit so we get more of that lens flare. Oop, let's undo that actually. And let's scale this guy down just a little bit here. There we go, that looks pretty nice. One thing you probably notice is the background is you can't see through it. So go to properties and change that to screen. And there we go, it looks a lot better. One thing that you can do is just adjust these lights constantly just to make the intro look like the way you would like it to. So there we go, that looks pretty cool. We see that lens flare is moving around, but the other one is staying still, which is what we are going for. All right, so we're done with step 3 now. Let's move over to step 4, which is animating this whole intro and making it look super nice. All right, so let's animate this whole intro and finish off this whole thing and make it look super nice. So now what we want to do is right off the bat, let's animate this text and all the flares first. So let's go to 15 frames, half of 30, which is our frame rate, and let's first make the text appear. So let's go to our properties on the text and press on opacity, and then go to 1 minute or 1 second and 15 frames, add another one. And then let's go to 8:15 right here, and let's add another keyframe, and then at 9:15 add another keyframe. Alrighty, so nothing has happened so far, but let's use these little keyframe buttons right here to go to the previous keyframe. Press on that guy, it should be at 100. Go back to our last keyframe and drag that all down to 0 so it fades out. Then go to the second keyframe, 100%, and then drop the first one down to 0 so it kind of fades on really nice like that. Really cool. So right at the front, let's go to about 7 frames right here, and let's go to the still flare and let's edit the opacity here as well. So 7 keyframes, then let's go to 107 here, add another keyframe, then go over here to about 805 or 807. Let's go 807, add another keyframe there, and then at 907 let's add another keyframe there. So let's go back a keyframe, or let's go to the last one, drag it down to 0 if I can, if my mouse is letting me, and then go to our first keyframe and drop that down to 0 as well. So if we play it back, that looks pretty nice. And if we want to extend out the still flare a little bit, we can go to 207 and drag those keyframes over there. So it's a little bit slower to animate on. Now, one other thing we need to do is animate this lens flare on. So let's go to about right here at 116. Let's add a keyframe for its opacity, and then go to 216 and add another keyframe. So I'm keeping like a 1 second interval in between. So right here at 8 seconds, let's animate out this lens flare by adding a keyframe, and then at undo that. And then at 9 seconds, let's add another keyframe to make that opacity go down to 0. So 0 opacity there, and go back to our first, and then go to 0. Alrighty, so let's watch what we have so far. That looks pretty nice. One thing I need to do is make that lens flare come in a little bit earlier, so press on the first one, hold shift, and go to that one, or the second one, and bring those closer in. So it goes like this. There we go, that looks a little bit better. And now with the still flare, let's shift click on those two and bring that in just a little bit. So the text comes on first, lens flare, then this guy comes in. Perfect. Then at the end, all of that stuff animates out. Maybe let's make the text animate out a little bit slower by dragging that last keyframe to the end of the project. Perfect. That is what we like. So now with our text, let's lock up all this stuff so we can't edit it because we are done with the text now. Now let's go to our textures, collapse all this stuff, and unlock it. And what we want to do is at about 17 seconds on this whole group, not on the front, mid, or back groups, but on the whole texture group, click on the opacity and add a keyframe there. And then go to about 117. Or let's go to 207 and then add a keyframe there. And let's see here. So that should be 0. So that should be 0. The first one should be 0. And the second one should be at 100. I don't know what happened there. So let's just erase these two keyframes right here. Press on the first and press on the second and press delete. let's expand all of this stuff, and what we want to do is add a keyframe for the front. So let's go to 17 frames right there, press on the front, and then go to our front there and add a keyframe right here for opacity, and then go to 207 like we were gonna do, and then add another keyframe. Then go down to the first and click on 0, so then that guy fades on, which is nice. Now what you want to do is then at the end go to about 8 seconds. Let's add another keyframe there, and then let's go to about 9:17 there, and add another one to keyframe that guy down to 0. And this guy should be at 100, 0. Good deal. All right, so now what you want to do is shift click on all of these keyframes and then copy them and paste them onto our other layers. So on our back or on our mid, let's paste those guys. And then on the back here, let's add those. So these guys should all come in correctly. Kind of looks really weird right now for some strange reason. Let's take a look. So you got all these guys looking good. Yeah, so these should all be working fine. So maybe what we need to do is just adjust these keyframes to come on a little bit sooner. So, or just delay them a tad bit here. So let's just move these keyframes around and just play with it until we get it to a point where we like it. So maybe we start out the back first. Maybe the back should come in last. There we go, that's looking pretty nice. So I kind of messed around with the values down here for the opacity keyframes just to get it to a point where I like it. It kind of starts out black and white, then it adds some purple and some other colors as well. Alright, so I kind of messed around with the opacity keyframes for the front, mid, and back as well, just to get it to a point where I like it. So if I play it back, it kind of starts out black and white and then adds some color, which looks really cool in my opinion. So then at the end of this, I'm going to fade out everything. But the thing is, it kind of has this really weird fade with all of those blending modes. So just try to find something that that you like the best. I'm going to have that fade out at the last there, and then the mid, kind of at the middle, and then the front, or the back coming out first, the mid coming second, and then the front coming last, just so it has this really cool black and white fade. So I think that looks so cool. Feel free to send me some of your samples as well, just because I love seeing all the work that you guys do as well. Yeah, that basically completes all of our tutorial, or this whole tutorial as well. But as well, in the description, as I mentioned at the beginning, we do have this bass music that you can add to this intro if you throw that into Final Cut or iMovie or Premiere or any of those editors as well. So just feel free to download this as well. I'll play it real quick just so you can get a sample of that. But thank you guys so much for following along with this tutorial. I think this is a really fun one to put together. Alright, but here's a quick little sample of what this space track sounds like. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video where I showed you how to create a space style intro inside of Motion 5. Down below in the comment section, let me know if you have any questions because I'd be happy to help you guys out. Also, let me know how this tutorial went for you because I also like to hear your feedback as well. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video again, and I'll see you in my next video. Have a great rest of your day.